Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me today for another Twilight Zone video on my Twilight Zone ranking series, where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. Today I'm going to be talking about number 26, And When the Sky Was Opened, written by Rod Serling, based on a story by Richard Matheson. This episode was directed by Douglas Hayes. This is a season 1 episode, and as always there will be episode spoilers. So, And When the Sky Was Opened is another season 1 episode and another classic in my opinion. When I first saw this episode, I was really impressed by it. In its own way, it is a very disturbing Twilight Zone episode. I really like the concept. It's very creative, especially for the time it was made in the late 50s, early 60s, and I think this episode probably made quite an impact on audiences of the time. And this is also another episode with great cinematography. I feel like the cinematography was always great in this show, but it really stands out in this episode in my opinion. Rod Taylor gives a strong performance in the lead, and the rest of the cast does a solid job as well. So this episode starts with a Colonel Clegg Forbes. He's at a hospital visiting his friend, a Major Gart, who has a broken leg. They return from space, where their spaceship disappeared from radar before reappearing and crashing. So the two men chat, and Forbes asks Gart how many men were on the mission. This seems like it should be a simple question, and Gart answers 2, but Forbes insists there was a third man, a Colonel Ed Harrington, that was with them. So we go back in time and we get a flashback of Forbes and this man Harrington, who we are just meeting, and they are in a bar. Everything seems okay until Harrington gets a weird feeling, like something is wrong, like he shouldn't be there. So Harrington calls his parents, and they tell him they have no son and believe this is some sort of prank call, so it's almost like Harrington doesn't exist. So in a very creepy and effective scene, Harrington disappears, and what's really strange is that no one but Forbes can remember him. So Forbes goes home at this point to see his wife, and she's worried about him, his mental state. He says he wrote a letter, and it's proof Harrington exists, but when he looks at it, Harrington's name isn't there. He also calls a military base to get proof, and they don't know who Harrington is either. Now Forbes is freaking out, and based on the circumstances, I really can't blame him. So back in the hospital, in the present, Gart has no idea what Forbes is talking about. He still remembers no Harrington at all. Forbes eventually freaks out and leaves, thinking he doesn't belong there anymore, realizing what is happening, and he disappears, and now Forbes is also a goner. So at this point, Gart asks the nurse where Forbes went, and she has no idea who Forbes is. So now Gart is naturally freaking out as he realizes what is happening, and he also disappears in yet another creepy scene. So at this point, someone comes in and asks if there's any available rooms, and the nurse takes this person to the empty room, which now has no returning astronauts, and this is all very creepy stuff. So like I said, a great concept, great execution. The direction by Douglas Hayes is really great as well. I really like the newspaper changing throughout the episode as well, showing how many astronauts were returning or not returning, I guess depending on how you look at it. I thought it was a very nice touch. I also actually like that we don't get an answer as to why this happens. It works for me. It makes the whole thing even more disturbing and interesting, in my opinion. So overall, I just feel like And When the Sky Was Opened is a very well done, atmospheric, and memorable episode of the Twilight Zone, and that's why it ranks at number 26 on my list. As always, feel free to leave me a comment and let me know what you thought of this episode. Thank you very much for your continued support, and thanks for watching.